They laughed. My own children laughed as they walked away toward the elevators, saying how good it felt to be free of the burden. That word, burden, hung in the air like a stone pressing against my chest. They had no idea I was standing right there in the hotel lobby, watching them. They had no idea that every single suite in this resort had been paid for by my hands, by my sacrifices, by nights of aching fingers and mornings of silent determination. They didn't know the truth, but I did. And they didn't know what I was about to do. But to understand how I reached that lobby in that moment of betrayal, we must go back a few weeks, back to the day my eldest son called me. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and the sun poured through my kitchen window, warming the table where I always set my afternoon coffee. Since my husband passed away 4 years ago, I had kept small routines. Coffee at 3. A short walk before dinner. The same chair by the window. That day, as I reached for the sugar jar, the phone rang. It was Daniel. His voice sounded sweet, almost rehearsed. He said he had a wonderful idea. He said we should take a family trip for the holidays, all of us together, like the good old days. He described the hotel on the coast. Pools, restaurants, activities for the children. I could almost see his smile through the phone. My heart fluttered. I had not been invited to anything in so long. Family dinners were the most I ever got, and even then, I was the one serving and clearing dishes while everyone else relaxed in the living room. For once, it sounded like I was included, truly included. I remember saying that it sounded wonderful, asking when it would be. He said the first week of January, 7 full days, with everyone, him, his wife Clara, my other son Samuel, his wife Nora, all the grandchildren, and me. He paused, then added that the hotel required a single person to make the reservation. Would I take care of it? He said they would send me the money afterward. It wasn't the first time I was asked to put my name on papers, to make guarantees, to handle the things no one else wanted to. I should have paused. I should have asked questions. But I didn't. My heart was too full at the thought of being wanted, of being part of something. So I said yes. Of course I would take care of it. That same afternoon, I called the hotel. Golden Palms, the receptionist said, her voice bright and professional. I told her I wanted to reserve 6 family suites, all-inclusive for 12 people from January 2nd to the 9th. She typed quickly and told me the total, $5,000. My breath caught. My pension was small, and what I earned from selling my handmade crochet bags at the Sunday market was hardly enough to cover extra expenses. I had saved about $1,200 after months of work. Still, the deposit alone was $2,500. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my rocking chair, counting and recounting my savings. I had some coins set aside in a tin I kept behind the canned beans, the kind of secret fund widows keep for emergencies. But even with that, I was short. I stared at my husband's brooch, the one he had given me on our 20th anniversary. A small, beautiful piece with emerald stones. I had treasured it all these years, but that night, I held it differently. It was no longer just a memory. It was the missing piece that could secure this trip. The next morning, I took it to Mr. Jenkins' jewelry shop. He looked at it carefully, turning it in the light, and then said he could give me $1,300. My stomach clenched. So little for something that meant so much. But I thought of Daniel's voice on the phone, of my grandchildren's smiles, of the chance to finally belong. I agreed. With the money from the brooch, my small savings, and the little I had tucked away, I managed to pay the deposit. The reservation was confirmed, all in my name under my credit card. 6 suites. 12 people. 7 days. I told myself it was worth it. This was my gift to my family, proof of my love. The weeks that followed were exhausting. I crocheted more bags than ever, selling them at the Sunday market, sometimes staying up past midnight to finish an order. I skipped the bus and walked instead. I bought cheaper groceries, turned down the heater, ate simpler meals. Every coin I saved went into paying the balance at the hotel. Each sacrifice was a secret, one more stitch in the blanket of love I thought I was wrapping around my children. 3 days before the trip, Daniel called again. He said the kids were excited, that Clara had already packed. He asked about the hotel preparations. I said everything was ready, just the final payment left. He brushed it off, we'll handle it when we get there. The important thing is we'll have fun." His words should have raised alarms, but I pushed the doubt aside. I told myself not to spoil the dream. The night before departure, I made the final payment. My credit card carried the weight of what I could not cover with cash, but I was proud. Everything was ready. I imagined family photos by the ocean, dinners together, laughter that included me this time. I woke before dawn the next morning, dressed in my best sky blue dress, the one Samuel once said made me look younger. I even wore a touch of makeup. Daniel honked outside at 7:30. I carried my suitcase with a smile that would not leave my face. In the car, Clara looked at her phone, barely greeting me. The children in the back murmured hello. The drive was filled with silence and half-answers. Still, I clung to hope. And then arrival. The hotel was breathtaking, with tall palms and white walls shining in the sun. I walked to the reception desk, gave my name, and listened with joy as the receptionist confirmed 6 suites, 7 nights, all inclusive. My heart swelled as she handed me the keys. But when I turned, my arms full of keychains shaped like palm trees, I realized I was alone. My children, my daughters-in-law, even the little ones, had disappeared toward the elevators without a word, without a glance back. Only Melissa, my teenage granddaughter, lingered by the stairs, her face troubled. I asked where the others had gone. She hesitated, then whispered, "Grandma, there's something you need to see." She showed me her phone. A group chat appeared on the screen. Its name, Drama-Free Vacation. My world tilted. One name on that glowing screen was enough to cut me deeper than any blade. Drama-Free Vacation. That's what my children had called the group they created behind my back. Melissa's hands trembled as she held her phone. She whispered that she hadn't wanted to show me, but I deserved to know the truth. I nodded, though my chest felt tight, and told her softly, "Read it to me." And so she did. Message after message spilled out, each one worse than the last. Daniel had written that I had fallen for the story, that I was sure I could handle the booking. He had laughed that even if I messed something up, they would fix it, but the important thing was that I paid. Clara had added a smiley face, writing that at least I was useful for something. Samuel had written that once the rooms were secured, they would keep me out of their way. And Nora, my other daughter-in-law, said they should just let me stay in my room and watch television while the rest of them enjoyed the pool and the restaurants. I listened as Melissa read, her voice breaking. Then she stopped, hesitating. I told her to go on. The most recent messages made my stomach twist. They had asked about transferring the reservation into their names. They had confirmed with the hotel that it was possible, since everything was under mine. Then Daniel had written, "Perfect. On the last day, we'll tell her there was a billing error. She'll be the one left to pay anyway." That was their plan. Months of my crocheting bags, of my cold evenings without heat, of my meals without meat, of selling my husband's brooch. All of it had been for them to laugh at me, use me, and abandon me with the debt. I stared at the marble floor of the hotel lobby, but it blurred under my tears. For a moment, I wanted to sink into the ground, to let the shame swallow me whole. My entire body shook. Melissa touched my arm gently and whispered, "Grandma, please don't cry." But I surprised myself. I was not crying. The tears burned in my eyes. Yes, but something else had risen inside me. Not defeat, not surrender. Something stronger, something sharper. I told Melissa to put the phone away. I needed to think. We walked slowly to the suite assigned to me. It was beautiful. Crisp white sheets, a balcony with a view of the sea, and a bathroom bigger than my kitchen at home. But none of it mattered. The bed looked cold. The balcony felt empty. All of it, I realized, was just a stage, one I had financed, while they planned to push me into the shadows. I sat on the edge of the bed. Melissa stood by the window, her eyes on the pool below where her parents and the others were already laughing, drinks in hand. I asked her when that group had started. She scrolled up, then showed me the date, the exact same day Daniel had called me with his sweet voice to invite me on this family trip. I closed my eyes and breathed in deeply. The scent of fresh flowers and clean linen filled the room, but all I could taste was bitterness. 40 years of raising those children, of putting their needs above mine, of giving and giving, only to be treated like a credit card with legs. But this time, things would be different. Melissa asked me what I was going to do. For a moment, I didn't answer. I looked out at the ocean instead, where the waves kept rolling in, steady and unstoppable. Finally, I said, I'm not going to stand here and cry. I'm going to make some calls. That evening, while the rest of the family enjoyed cocktails and planned their drama-free week, I sat in my room with the phone pressed to my ear. First, I called my bank. I explained carefully that I expected a fraudulent dispute attempt from my own children. The representative assured me they would put a protection note on my account. If anyone tried to challenge the charges, the investigation would immediately fall in my favor. Then, I called the hotel reception. I asked for the manager, and a man named Miguel came on the line. I explained my situation. He listened kindly, told me he understood, and promised to send me written confirmation that the reservation was under my name and paid fully by me. He also said he would make sure no changes could be made without my presence. We agreed to meet the next morning at 9. Finally, I called Mr. Howard, the lawyer who had once helped my husband with his will. He listened to every detail. When I finished, he sighed heavily and said, Isadora, what your children are doing counts as financial abuse. You have the right to protect yourself legally. He promised to email me a sworn statement that I could notarize at the hotel, making everything official. By the time I hung up, the sun had set. I sat in the golden glow of the last light, listening to my family's laughter drift up from the beach. But instead of pain, I felt something new. Calm determination. That night, as I packed away the documents the hotel had emailed, I whispered to myself, tomorrow, everything changes. If you were in my place, what would you have done after reading that group chat? Would you confront them right away or stay silent and plan? Tell me in the comments. If my children thought I would sit quietly in my room while they enjoyed the beach, they didn't know me at all. I had spent my whole life swallowing hurt in silence, convincing myself that endurance was love. But that evening, after seeing those messages, something hardened inside me. Love without respect is not love. It is slavery. The next morning, I woke before sunrise, not from habit but from resolve. I put on a simple navy dress, brushed my hair, and straightened my shoulders. My first appointment was at the hotel manager's office. At 9 sharp, I met Miguel, the manager. His office smelled faintly of coffee and polished wood. He listened carefully as I explained everything, from Daniel's sweet invitation to the cruel words in the secret chat. He never once interrupted, only nodded with professional calm. Then he laid 2 documents on the desk. The first confirmed in writing that I was the sole reservation holder and had personally paid the full balance. The second was an addendum that gave me exclusive authority. I could modify services, cancel rooms, and decide who stayed under the reservation. This means complete control, Miguel explained. I stared at the paper. For the first time in months, I felt power in my hands. I signed both documents, and Miguel promised to alert all staff. If anyone tries to change details without you present, he said firmly, we will call you immediately. From there, I walked to a quiet corner of the lobby where a notary was waiting, arranged by Miguel's team. I signed the sworn statement that Mr. Howard, my lawyer, had prepared. The notary stamped it, sealing the record that I had paid everything voluntarily and that any attempt to dispute charges would be considered fraud. By 11 o'clock, the paperwork was done. I held a folder in my hands that felt heavier than gold. Proof, authority, and protection. Meanwhile, through the glass windows of the lobby, I could see my family by the pool. Daniel was splashing his children while Clara lounged in a chair, sunglasses hiding her eyes. Samuel and Nora sipped cocktails, laughing as if their plan were already complete. None of them knew what I carried in my folder. None of them knew that the balance of power had shifted completely. Back in my room, I sat with Melissa. I told her about the documents, the notary, the meeting with Miguel. Her eyes widened as she realized what it all meant. Grandma, you could cancel their rooms, she whispered. Yes, I said calmly. And I will. But not yet. Timing is everything. I explained that at 10 the next morning, Miguel would deactivate the key cards for 4 of the 6 suites. Their rooms, Daniel and Clara's, Samuel and Nora's, and the extras for the children, would all be blocked. Only my suite would remain active. At 11, the hotel staff would officially notify them that the reservation had been modified by me. Melissa stared at me in awe. "You're really going to do it?" I said. "Not because of the money, though I sacrificed more than they'll ever understand, but because they plan to betray me and then laugh about it. And that child is something I cannot forgive." That evening, I joined the family for dinner. I didn't tell them what I had done. I smiled politely as they ordered expensive dishes and glasses of wine, all charged to my name. I listened quietly as Daniel bragged about how the kids would love the spa tomorrow, as Clara joked that I might need rest in the room, as Samuel laughed that everything was going smoothly. But under the table, my hand rested on the folder of documents in my bag. Their words no longer pierced me. I had the truth, I had the law, and soon I would have justice. As the dinner plates were cleared, Melissa caught my eye from across the table. She knew. She was the only one who knew. And in that moment, I realized something important. I was not alone anymore. That night, while the others slept, I packed my suitcase carefully. Not to leave, but to be ready. I placed the documents in the side pocket, set my alarm for dawn, and whispered to myself the words I had never dared to say before. Tomorrow, I choose me. I didn't need an alarm to wake me. My body rose with the sun, filled not with dread but with something sharper, anticipation. The day I had planned was finally here. I dressed with care, not in the soft dresses I usually wore, but in the navy suit I had once saved for important occasions. I wanted to look strong, not fragile. This was not a day for sentiment. It was a day for clarity. At 6:30, I went down to the nearly empty restaurant for coffee. The sea breeze floated through the open doors, carrying the smell of salt and flowers. I reviewed the folder of documents Miguel and the notary had prepared. Everything was in order. My sworn statement, the manager's written confirmation, the reservation addendum giving me full control. At 9, I walked into Miguel's office again. He stood and greeted me warmly. "Mrs. Isadora," he said, "we are ready." He explained the procedure one last time. For suites, Daniel and Clara's, Samuel and Nora's, plus the extra rooms, would be cancelled under my authority. At 10 sharp, their key cards would stop working. At 11, hotel staff would notify them formally. Security would be nearby, but discreet. Miguel asked if I was certain. I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "I have never been more certain of anything in my life." At 9:55, I returned to my suite. From my balcony, I could see the pool area. Daniel and Samuel were splashing in the water with the children, while Clara and Nora lounged with cocktails. Their laughter drifted up toward me, carefree, confident, as if the world were theirs to command. They had no idea the countdown had already begun. I sat in the armchair by the window, coffee cup in hand, and watched the minutes tick away. Melissa was beside me, pale with nervousness but determined. She kept checking her phone, ready to update me if anything happened. 9:59. I breathed in deeply, steadying myself. 10 o'clock. Right on time, my phone buzzed. A message from Miguel. "The system has updated. Keys deactivated." And just like that, for suites became nothing more than locked doors. I leaned back in the chair, calm washing over me. The power was no longer theirs. It was mine. 10 minutes later, Melissa's phone buzzed. She peeked and whispered, "Mom's going to the elevators. She's trying to get into her room." Moments later, another message. "She's yelling at reception now. Dad and Uncle Samuel are heading there too." I could almost hear it. The rising panic, the confusion as key cards failed, the frustration as reception explained there had been changes. At 10:20, my phone rang. Daniel's number. I let it buzz twice before answering. His voice was tight, forced calm covering panic. He said there was some kind of mistake, their cards weren't working. He wanted me to come to reception to sort it out. I asked lightly, "What kind of mistake?" He stammered. He said the hotel thought the reservation had been changed. But, of course, no one had changed anything. "How strange," I said, my tone as sweet as sugar. "Are you sure no one made changes?" Silence. Then he begged me to come down quickly, because the kids wanted to get back to the rooms. I told him I was busy with important matters and hung up before he could protest. Melissa looked at me wide-eyed. "Grandma, you sounded so calm." "Calm," I told her, "is the strongest weapon I have." At 10:45, another message buzzed on Melissa's phone. her Aunt Nora shouting at reception, Samuel demanding explanations, Clara nearly in tears. At 10:58, Miguel himself called me. His voice was steady. Mrs. Isadora, everything is ready. Staff will inform them officially at 11. Security is standing by. Do you want to be present? No, I said softly. I'll wait here. Let the facts speak for themselves. At 11 on the dot, I watched from the balcony as Miguel, a guest relations officer, and a discreet security guard walked toward my family. From above, I could see Daniel's arms flailing as he demanded answers, Samuel's face red with anger, Clara shouting something I couldn't hear, Nora clutching her bag. Then Miguel pointed toward the hotel. I knew he was explaining that the reservation holder, me, had changed the stay. I saw their shock, their confusion, their fury. I saw my grandchildren tugging at their parents, not understanding why they couldn't go back to their rooms. And I sat there, sipping my coffee, calm and unshaken. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't their servant, their safety net, or their silent wallet. For the first time, I was in control. The knock came at exactly 11:05. It wasn't polite. It wasn't gentle. It was hard, urgent, the kind of knock that carries anger behind it. I stood, walked slowly to the door, and opened it. There they were. Daniel, Samuel, Clara, and Nora, all four standing together, their faces a storm of emotions. Behind them, in the hallway, I could see some of my grandchildren holding beach bags, confused, their eyes darting from parent to parent. Clara burst out first. She demanded to know what was going on. She said the hotel had told them their rooms were canceled, and she called it ridiculous. I answered calmly, "Why is it ridiculous?" "Because your family." My words stunned her into silence. Daniel stepped forward, his voice softer, trying to play the role of mediator. He said clearly there must be some misunderstanding, that we should all go to reception together and sort it out. I shook my head. There is no misunderstanding, Daniel. I canceled the rooms. You are no longer welcome under my reservation. Nora's eyes widened in disbelief. She asked what I meant. Wasn't this supposed to be a family trip? I told her, I thought so too, until I discovered that you don't consider me part of this family. And then, before they could invent excuses, I reached for the folder I had prepared. I pulled out copies of the screenshots Melissa had sent me and held them up. Do you recognize these? Their faces changed instantly. Daniel's eyes dropped to the floor. Samuel froze pale. Clara looked furious but speechless. Nora pressed her lips together as if she might be sick. I read aloud, perfect. The old lady pays, we enjoy. A free vacation without drama. I told them I knew about their plan to transfer the rooms, to dispute the charges at the bank, to leave me with the debt. I know everything, I said firmly. Clara slumped into a chair in my suite, covering her face with her hands. Samuel muttered that I couldn't do this, not with the children around. He begged me to think of the little ones. My voice did not rise, but it grew sharper. The same children you were planning to keep away from me? The same grandchildren you wanted to hand to a nanny so I wouldn't bother them? Don't pretend this is about the children. This is about money. My money. Daniel tried again, saying they could work this out, that maybe I was overreacting. I asked him plainly, overreacting? To betrayal? To being called a burden? He had no answer. For the first time in years, silence fell in my presence. Not because I was ignored, but because I had spoken with undeniable truth. Then I laid out their options. Calmly, clearly, without shaking. You can take your belongings, which the staff has already packed. You can call a taxi. And you can pay for your own vacation somewhere else. Those are your only choices. Nora's eyes filled with tears. She said I was destroying the family. I looked her straight in the eye and told her, no. The family destroyed itself when you decided I was nothing more than a wallet. There was no screaming from me, no trembling. Just the quiet truth of years of sacrifice finally breaking free. And as I stood in that room with 4 of my grown children and their spouses, all of them speechless, I realized something. For the first time in my life, I wasn't begging to be loved. I was demanding respect. For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence pressed against the walls, heavy and suffocating. Daniel and Samuel looked at each other, searching for words that would not come. Clara stared at me with fury, while Nora's tears slid down her face. Finally, Samuel tried again. He said they had made mistakes, but we were family and family could fix things. He reached his hands out, pleading. I told him quietly, "You want to fix things now, after months of planning to deceive me? After laughing at me in your secret chat? Tell me, Samuel, would you be apologizing if you hadn't been caught?" He couldn't answer. Clara jumped in then, her voice sharp. She said I couldn't just throw them out, that I would regret this when I was lonely again. Her words were meant to pierce me, to remind me of the fear that had kept me quiet all these years. But instead of shrinking, I stood taller. I said, I would rather be alone than surrounded by people who despise me. Their faces fell. At that moment, Melissa stepped forward from the corner where she had been standing. Her voice was trembling, but strong enough to cut through the silence. She told her parents she knew everything. She told them she had seen the group chat, that she knew they had planned to leave me with the bill, that they had mocked me when all I had done was sacrifice for them. Her words were like lightning in the room. Clara turned on her daughter, demanding to know what she had seen, how she knew. But Melissa didn't flinch. She said, "Grandma sold her brooch for this trip. Did you even care? Did you even ask what it cost her?" The shame was visible. Daniel sank into a chair. Samuel's face turned pale. Nora buried her face in her hands. I let Melissa's words settle before I spoke again. My tone was steady. Here are the consequences. The hotel staff has already packed your things. A taxi is waiting downstairs. You will leave today. You will pay for your own vacation somewhere else. Clara shot to her feet, shouting that this was unfair, that I was cruel. I simply asked her, who abandoned whom first? She had no reply. The hallway outside was filled with the soft voices of my grandchildren, confused, asking why they couldn't go back to their rooms. My heart cracked at the sound, but I reminded myself, they were innocent. This was not their fault. Melissa looked at me, her eyes shining with both sadness and pride. She whispered, "Grandma, you're brave." I shook my head gently. "Not brave, child. Just finally awake." And in that moment, with my children cornered by their own lies and my granddaughter standing by my side, I understood the truth. Respect was not something given freely. It was claimed. That day I claimed mine. If you were in my place, would you have sent them away immediately or given them one more chance? Tell me in the comments. I had always believed that family meant endurance. That if I gave enough, if I bent enough, if I stayed silent long enough, they would see my love and respect me for it. But as I stood in that hotel suite, facing Daniel, Clara, Samuel, and Nora, I realized the truth. Endurance without boundaries is nothing but surrender. I had drawn my line at last. The hotel staff arrived quietly with their bags, neatly packed and placed in the hallway. Miguel's team had been professional, discreet, but firm. One by one, the suitcases were set down like silent reminders that their time under my name was over. Daniel tried one last time. He said we could still repair this, that we could talk. His words sounded empty, desperate. I told him gently, "We cannot repair something you broke on purpose." Clara snapped that I was humiliating them in front of the children. I told her, "You humiliated yourselves the moment you called me a burden." Samuel asked what the grandchildren would think, how they would remember this. My voice softened for the first time. They will remember that their grandmother finally chose her dignity. Melissa was standing beside me, holding her small suitcase. She had made her decision quietly, without pressure. She told her parents she could not be part of their betrayal, that she wanted to stay with me. Her words struck them harder than anything I could have said. Nora broke down then, sobbing into her hands, whispering that they hadn't realized how far it had gone. But I knew better. They had known every step of the way. They had simply assumed I would stay silent. When Miguel appeared at the doorway, he spoke gently. "The taxi is ready." His calm presence steadied me. I nodded. I turned to my children one last time. "I kept one room," I said quietly. "One room for me, one room for the person who treated me with respect. That is all I need." They begged, threatened, pleaded, but I did not waver. For the first time in my life, I felt firm, steady, unshakable. Melissa and I stepped into the hallway. I bent down to the younger grandchildren, who clutched their little beach bags, eyes wide with confusion. I hugged them tightly. I told them I loved them, that none of this was their fault, that someday they would understand. One of them whispered, "Grandma, are we not building sandcastles anymore?" My heart ached, but I smiled. Someday, we will build the most beautiful sandcastles in the world, when your parents remember how to treat people they love. And then I rose, took Melissa's hand, and walked toward the elevator. Behind me, my children stood with their bags, their faces a mix of rage and defeat. In front of me, Melissa's hand was steady in mine. I had lost 5 rooms, but I had gained something far more valuable, myself. The taxi pulled away from the Golden Palms Hotel just past noon. I didn't look back at first. My heart was still pounding, my hands still trembling from everything I had just done. But when I finally turned my head, I saw them. Daniel, Clara, Samuel, and Nora, standing by their suitcases in front of the hotel, arguing, calling on their phones, trying to find another place to stay. For once, I felt no guilt. Melissa sat beside me, her small hand folded into mine. She didn't speak at first, just leaned her head against my shoulder. Finally, she whispered, "Grandma, do you regret it?" I thought about the brooch I had sold, the late nights of crocheting bags, the meals I had skipped, the cold evenings I had endured to make this trip possible. I thought about the secret chat, the cruel words, the laughter in the lobby when they called me a burden. And then I thought about this moment, about my granddaughter beside me, choosing respect over comfort, honesty over silence. "No, my dear," I answered softly. "I don't regret what I did. I only regret that it took me so long to value myself." The taxi wound along the coast until it reached a smaller boutique hotel I had booked that very morning with Miguel's help. It wasn't grand like Golden Palms. It had no towering palm trees or marble fountains. But it was warm, welcoming, and honest. Everything my last hotel stay had not been. Melissa and I checked in together. The receptionist smiled kindly, handed us a single key, and wished us a pleasant stay. Our room had a balcony that overlooked the sea, and the first thing Melissa did was run outside to breathe in the ocean air. Her laughter rang out, pure and free, and for the first time in days, I laughed with her. That evening, we shared a simple dinner: grilled fish, fresh bread, and fruit. No pretenses, no hidden agendas. Just a grandmother and a granddaughter at a table, finally at peace. Later, we walked along the shore. Melissa collected shells, and I let the waves wash over my feet. Each step felt lighter than the last. I realized that for decades, I had let others decide my worth. I had let silence and sacrifice define me. But standing there on the sand, with the horizon painted gold by the setting sun, I understood the truth. Value isn't given by others. It is claimed by yourself. Melissa looked up at me and smiled. "Grandma, tomorrow, can we build sandcastles?" "Yes," I said, smiling back. "Tomorrow, we'll build the strongest, tallest castle the tide has ever seen. And this time, it would not be washed away." Did you enjoy my story? Have you ever had to draw a hard line with people you love? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one. And remember, your value is yours to define.